Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not an ideologue. This can be a very good or very bad thing, depending on sort of who he's listening to at the time of policy making. We know that outside of self interest and self promotion, let's call it, we would be hard pressed to decipher the principle underpinning Donald Trump's decision making. That is, we cannot track further policy decisions for Trump based on previous actions and policy agenda. This unpredictable part of Trump makes him exciting for some people and unmanageable for others. On one hand, he represents the dark money that haunts American politics. On the other, his supporters see him as a liberator of the American government from this dark money. I am always fascinated by Trump's victories and his hold on his base in particular. In this video, I want to discuss the stronghold Trump's base versus the technocrats and how these new tech bros diverge sort of from the MAGA base ideologically. This way, we can set up something in this video to track the deep schism in the party. Who will win? The poorly educated Trump claims to love so much, or the elites who look down on them and want to exploit them as a group? With the discussion of H-1B visas, we find ourselves audience to the first major fight between the elites and the white nationalists, or MAGA base, in the party. So, grab your coffee, water, tea. This is tea. Whatever you're drinking, go and get that, and let's talk. Let's do some predictive analysis of what is to come for the next 4 years. So, let's do it.
Hey, yo. As a MAGA man, I voted for Trump, hoping that he would deport these motherfuckers and trying to make America great again. You know what I mean? I thought he was going to get rid of all the brown and the Mexican and the Haitians and all that. He said that they were criminals, and I voted for him just for that reason. It wasn't, if I'm honest about it, ain't got to do with the price of eggs. Fuck the eggs, man. I'm trying to make sure that I got white power in America. You know what I mean? That's why I voted for Trump. He's supposed to be the protector of that. He's supposed to be taking care of that for me as a white man in America. And now Elon said, oh, H-1B visa, they got to come over here, specialize, work intelligence and degrees and shit. But we ain't trying to get rid of all the brown and black folks, even if they are smart. And then Elon insulted Americans, said Americans ain't capable, Americans ain't smart enough. And now Trump, he gonna back that shit, man. If I didn't know better, it's almost like Trump just lied to us, because now he's saying groceries is going to go up and a bunch of other shit, man. It's almost like Trump lied to us just to get voted. Thank God I know Trump ain't laying a goddamn liar. He ain't never told a lie, though, so I'm going to support Trump on this one. But, it seems that way if I didn't know better. You know what I mean? Glad I'm not in the cult.
Okay, so that was a parody, and I was gagged, but it was... It was God, they are mad. So after Trump won the 2024 election, he created a new cabinet position for Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Note, Trump's cabinet is like the GDP of a country, right? Like, have you ever just taken a quick glance at Trump's cabinet? I don't think that I've ever seen, and I should Google this, but I don't think I've ever seen so many billionaires in government. I think that there must be sort of a remnant left over from monarch rule, where instead of blood royals, we have a royal bloodline. We use money and economic success as a marker for good leadership, being born into money. In a lot of our minds, having money makes someone better than us. We give them moral superiority and the right to lead, the right to rule. I want us, hopefully, to start challenging ourselves on this notion. I truly, I truly want us to really think about whether or not having wealth in the system makes someone a better leader, and maybe contend more with the fact that being insanely wealthy might speak to the opposite qualities we look for in a leader, such as compassion and care for their fellow man. Like, or maybe that's not what you look for in a leader. I'm not saying this as a sort of factual matter about what leadership entails. I know what it entails for me, though I can cite research and studies about what good leadership is and being a servant leader and how important that is. I am here just merely stating that as a potential truth for you all, hopefully, to engage with, right? And I hope you'll do it.
Not on my watch. Not on my watch.
Steeped in Miss Americana, not the documentary, but a means of referencing American culture. When I say Americana, I usually add Miss in front of it, is the idea that America is a meritocratic system. I discussed this in a video that is linked below or flashing across the top. About merit and the myth of the meritocratic system that is America. The American export here, the American dream, would have us believe that each of us, if we work hard enough, if we do more, give more of ourselves, we too can become billionaires. This idea is so deeply engraved that we find ourselves sacrificing our protection through policies at the altar of wealth protection, billionaire worship, let's call it. The idea is that we are all billionaires in the making. Therefore, we need to protect billionaires now for when we become billionaires. The ghetto. There's also a separate school of thought that even if we don't make it to the billionaire's financial status, they earned it, and therefore it is unfair. It is unfair of us to question or disrupt their earnings. In this position, exploitation of employees, exploitation of the system, exploitation of people, degenerate business practices, government bailouts with our tax dollars are completely dismissed as a means to an end in capitalism. They won at the game. They played the game right. Not only do they play the game right, but they should be rewarded. We, the people, who would question this wealth accumulation are labeled sore losers who can't sustain.
Who can't sustain?
Can't sustain is, I mean, cannot compete, who need to shut up and work harder and forget our own exploitation because, period. That's it, because period. We will get back to the ideas that make up Americana and how both Vivek and Musk are, in my opinion, deeply out of touch with these ideas, or maybe they just don't care about these ideas, but they are directly in conflict with the American ideas around what it means to be American and Americana more generally. For now, let's speak more broadly about Musk and Vivek and their contributions to the GOP divide, specifically on immigration. These two men lay in bed with racists, then woke up confused when they had racist fleas, wanting to carve out an exception for sort of the ideas around immigration for non-white people coming to America for their base and to work in their business was definitely not going to fly with the vocal MAGA supporters online. And I say online because that's what we have captured right now. So Vivek and Musk want brown, in quotation, brown people here. Oh no, sir, that won't do. Vivek probably thinks, oh, they welcome me, it's just the blacks that they don't care about and the Mexican. But Vivek might not have understood tokenism. But he's about to learn. Racist Buffy the Vampire Undead Princess Uncoulter already told him, and I'll play that video in a quick second, told him about himself and why she wouldn't vote for him. But we need to talk more about the H-1B visa. So before we do that, let's talk quickly about the fight between the tech bros and the white nationalists in the GOP party, the MAGA branch of the GOP party. While these people, the tech bros and white nationalists, while they might seem similar, the weird kids in school who were the outcasts, they are not. They're not similar by any stretch of the imagination. One group the nerds, though outcasts, they would go on to develop new technologies and work in fields where they became extraordinarily successful. That is inevitable. The other, I don't know what the white nationalists, the other just did not have friends and clung desperately to their whiteness as a means of security in a world that did not care to engage with them. Maybe they ate their boogers, who knows? In high school, while there is often overlap, and I think this is important that I pointed out, while there are sort of often overlaps, even brotherhood in the collective rejection, these two groups are different and have very different interests in adulthood. I mean, one definitely has a company to run and looks the other looks at themselves in the mirror and thank God, with all their failures, at least they are they are white. This is definitely an oversimplification, and you can definitely be a white nationalist without also being an outcast. There are very many people in strong leadership position who are racist and nationalists. I'm doing a stereotype of the two groups, so just putting that there. So, again, this is an obvious oversimplification of a very complex part of Americana. However, in the interest of not prolonging the video with useless information that is not germane to the points that we're about to get into, this characterization will have to do. Now, back to the divide in the MAGA GOP, and I'm calling it the MAGA GOP. I'm not just saying MAGA. I will just say GOP, but I'm not just saying MAGA. It is the party. The furthest I could trace this divide was with Ann Coulter and Vivek, something I mentioned earlier, where she straight up told him, because you're Indian, I could not vote for you. Watch this.
You are so bright and articulate, and I guess I can call you articulate since you're not an American black. Can't say that about them. That's derogatory. And that was a great opening segment. Lots of things to talk about there. Oh, and I agreed with many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
Did you all not see him smirk when she was dragging black folks and making fun of black people? You are not black, so I can say this. He definitely smirked at the disrespect of black people. Then he got dragged. Girl, karma was karmaing that day. He would later cry on other shows about being dragged and that he had no pushback or self-defense instinct in the moment. I think the fact that he had no pushback or self-defense instinct in the moment is actually a him problem.
You're not ashamed of yourself. Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing.
This is not the video to engage with him giving up his identity in order to be accepted. Just know it highlights for me the truth about how one has to diminish themselves as a minority in the MAGA group, on the MAGA train. Fight with yourself about that reality, not with me. Now, I will read these comments, but I will not respond to them about how I think minorities have to give up a lot of who they are when they associate in the MAGA group or GOP generally. As part of the MAGA group, as a minority, when you're in community with MAGA people, you don't get to speak about your identity unless you're putting it down. But let's get back to the internal GOP conflict that people online are labeled the GOP MAGA civil war. All right, let's do it. Let me quickly discuss the H-1B visa, what they are, since it is so central to the discourse and causing all this commotion. Like, the H-1B visa is just that, guys. It's causing all this commotion. I will refrain from adding a Beyonce meme here, but no, I am thinking about Beyonce right now. H-1B visas bill, written in 1990 as part of the Immigration Act of 1990, it was premised on the idea that the best talent for certain jobs might not be in the U.S. This already is an indictment on the American decisions around schooling and learning and the talent in America. This is an indictment on it. The premise that companies can find cheaper labor elsewhere was too direct. Something more, something different had to be offered. The idea that America needed to be more competitive on the world stage and engage in a global labor market was easier to digest in the 1990s, easier to understand, though it meant the same thing. right? We just don't have enough talent. We needed more scientists and engineers. They said the bill essentially would reach out and get the smartest people in the world and put them in America so that we will have an unlimited supply, or more of a supply at least, of smart people, scientists and engineers, right? That's what the H-1B visa was supposed to be for. Again, though, this is a slap in the face of the American public, right? If you ask me, where the truth was more likely if we were to dig into why this was being enacted, the truth was America wanted cheaper labor tied to a contract in the US for a specific company. The worker, therefore, becomes the full sort of laborer. I want to use the word indentured servitude, but unculture use it, so I won't. To these companies. The bill allowed companies to do their recruitment overseas for a specialized job in science and engineering generally. There are also carve out that allowed these companies to look for cheaper labor to outsource jobs to foreigners. That's what most people are talking about. And the fact that there is sort of a specific requirement for salary is something we need to get into, because it ignores the labor union and when companies can fight back when employees fight for more, right? Capitalism is about, in my mind, getting to the bottom line of profit and lowering the cost of labor while making as much profit. It is important to note that upwards of 70% of H-1B visa users came from India, as highlighted by the U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services. It is important to also note the exploitation that can exist. I'm not saying does always exist, but it can exist for those workers who are coming in on these visas. It might not just be an issue of salary, but whether or not there can be collective bargaining in different companies is an issue that needs to be discussed. To summarize here again, H-1B visas are controversial and very much supported by companies like Google, Facebook, and pretty much all of Elon Musk's friends and tech bros and businesses in that sector. The American workers do not benefit from these programs, and some have put in positions, some of these programs and companies have put in programs to train immigrants who would then replace Americans in certain fields. There was a 60-minute video that I will link in the description that you can watch where people were complaining about training their replacement on H-1B visas. So that was an interesting thing. Again, there is a set amount of H-1B visas each year. Over 99% of H-1B visa holds at least a bachelor's degree. So these are highly educated people who are coming into the U.S. vis-a-vis. That is wow. I mean, there is an exception here also. Put Melania Trump's picture floating somewhere here, where models can come into the U.S. without a degree. Melania did this. Why was there a model carved out for H-1B visa? Was there also a model shortage in the US? Period. Period. Anyway, the issue here is that the visas aren't being used to fill shortage, but rather they displace American workers for cheaper foreign laborer. And I'm not just talking about cheaper in terms of salary, I'm talking about negotiation power more broadly. Please don't just think about salary. Since these workers need to have a job to stay in the US, they are at a distinct disadvantage as they cannot complain because they might be fired, and if they're fired, they might be deported. Again, the bargaining power for these workers severely diminished, and then diminishes the ability of Americans to negotiate there. Who gonna tell the MAGA folks who gonna tell the MAGA folks that they're not qualified for these jobs that they think the H-1B visa users are taking from them? Well, apparently Vivek and Musk are going to go tell them. To be fair, they might not be arguing on their own behalf, but on behalf of American workers generally, which I think is their argument. After Trump announced his pick for head of AI as an Indian-born immigrant who was definitely pro-H-1B visas and made that very known publicly, this is how the war began, Lauren Loomer, conspiracy theorist extraordinaire, would publicly bash him. And I'll put in this. Look, I hope you can see this. Note, Lauren Loomer does backtrack as Trump supported his H-1B visa program, which is directly against what he said previously. He very specifically said H-1B visa program should not exist. This is Trump previously, even though he uses it Look, this is what Trump said about H-1B visa previously. Now he's backing Elon and Vivek.
The H-1B very well, and it's something that I frankly use, and I shouldn't be allowed to use. We shouldn't have. The Buy and Hire American order I'm about to sign will help protect workers and students like those of you in the audience today. This historic action declares that the policy of our government is to aggressively promote and use American-made goods and to ensure that American labor is hired to do the job. Right now, widespread abuse in our immigration system is allowing American workers of all backgrounds to be replaced by workers brought in from other countries to fill the same job for sometimes less pay. This will stop. American workers have long called for reforms to end these visa abuses.
Trump goes wherever the wind blows. And he said something, Trump tweeted something about how he used H-1B visa employees at his resorts that made no sense. He doesn't understand it, so I'm going to move on. So the lady, these are spineless people who will do anything for proximity to power. Of course, she backed down. The fight that ensued from this on X, formerly Twitter, is interesting because it highlights a major divide and gets at the heart of a fundamental question with the GOP. Here's a question. Are billionaires going to implement policies in the interest of the base and the general public? Put another way, will the rich care for the poor, or can the rich and the poor's interests be in alignment in such a way that policies that benefit the rich, the wealthy, the billionaires, will positively impact the poor? Okay, look, maybe I'm being messy. Sure, this is classified, but this is about white nationalists wanting white America with less people of color. And tech bros who depend on certain immigrant population, Indians in particular, for labor in their businesses. Let me add a racial note here. Isn't it interesting how people will side with white supremacists, completely ignore the partnership will only work so long as whiteness is upheld? Funny how some, not all, of our Asian American brothers and sisters will bow to white supremacy against black people, not realizing the model minority myth only serves to attack black people and Latinos. Acceptance is conditional for Asian American and can be revoked at any point. The fact that anyone would willingly give up power to someone else for acceptance seems odd to me. They will welcome you in the fight against affirmative action and the fight against DEI initiative because you need to be qualified to access, is what they would say. The rationale is not true, but you knew that, right? Yet when there is a question about hiring highly educated immigrants from India, the objection is no longer about merit. You see that? It is now moving the goalpost to national origin. The new argument is instead of getting someone qualified from overseas, we should train locally. Here, watch this.
And that's wrong. Instead, they should be given to the most skilled and highest paid applicants, and they should never, ever be used to replace Americans. No one can compete with American workers when they are given a fair and level playing field, which has not happened for decades. We're using every tool at our disposal to restore the American dream.
I need Obama's number right now. I need Obama's number right now. I know he's not a president, but I know he knows something. I need to know when am I going to leave this misery?
This is not a bad argument if you ignore the fight against affirmative action and DEI. Now that people can be trained to do the work, what is the argument against qualification and merit used in affirmative action? If you believe we shouldn't hire outside and we can train people to do the work, isn't that the argument about affirmative action that people should be given an opportunity, people should be given a chance so that they can engage and not be excluded? Or is it that you just don't want competition and this is a white exclusion, right? This is an exclusive club for white people only to complete, white men in particular. The goalpost will continue to be moved because it is not logical. This is fundamentally about protecting whiteness. Listening to that, I am now clear that everyone understands the argument for affirmative action when applied to American workers, giving them a fair chance, but nowhere else. This even goes further by limiting competition, which DE and affirmative action does not do. But go off, sis. Now, this is an indictment on schooling, but I will get back to that in a minute and the American education system. If we have jobs in the US for which there are high paid salaries and we don't have qualified people, not because people don't want to do the job, but because they're not qualified, this sounds like a system level problem, and that we need to be training people, all people in America, so that these jobs can be filled. I think this bleeds very directly in to affirmative action and DEI. Yeah, I do. I think the same argument can be made about limiting access for Black people and women generally, right? Instead of saying limit access, why not train them? And that is the issue that I have, where affirmative action and DEI is a request for an opportunity to compete. It is not to give unqualified people a position. But the rejection of H-1B visa is fundamentally rejecting the idea of merit and promoting the idea of national origin, which, again, I'm not arguing is good or bad. I just find it fascinating that we so readily uphold merit as the standard for hiring and schooling, but as soon as merit becomes an issue for certain groups of people in competition with Indians, for example, then merit isn't the touchstone and we move to nationality. The argument here, quite simply against me, is, well, we are talking about locally. We are talking about only in the American system when we talk about merit. As soon as we go outside of the US and engage in globalism, then we now have to have a discussion about boundaries around nation states and who gets to get in and be involved with. I agree with this argument. Now, you have to prove that there are people in the US who can do the job for which H-1B visas are being issued for people to come in. If you can do that, then that is a great argument. And now we're back at square one to discuss, should we say people who can qualify or the most qualified should get the job, right? We can do that. We can have that argument separately. I think people on the left have long disliked H-1B visas in the way that it exploits people who come here who cannot fight for hours worked, who cannot fight for more pay, who cannot engage in the way that an American worker could engage so that they can hire the pay for everyone in the company, or at least people at their level in the company. And so there is a distinct disadvantage for people who have immigrated on H-1B visa here to the US working, where they are tied very directly to the company that sponsors this visa, and they have to put in the work, our time, all of it into the company, and if they stray, they can be fired and deported, which I've mentioned earlier. I think this is interesting, and I don't think the conversation about H-1B visa should happen without the conversation of DEI and affirmative action. In truth, it looks like the MAGA crew wants to limit competition and stack the deck all in their favor. And while I'm upset and annoyed by that, I think this is part of capitalism and how the game works. When your party wins, you get to set the terms of engagement. Unfortunately for the MAGA group, Trump don't care nothing about their opinion, it seems. And now that he has his technocrat friends, well, I guess their words rule supreme. Let's get back to the show. Let's go further. Now, let's get back on topic. That was a detour that I will chop and screw, hopefully. The left has deemed this, they've been calling this a civil war on the right. Also, please like the video, and comment below. It is very helpful with the algorithm, the mysterious algorithm. If you want this content to be discovered by others, it is very helpful if you like and comment something down below so we can engage with each other. So, after Trump announced an Indian American with a pro H-1B visa leading as his nominee to his AI advisor spot, Loomer took to X to denounce the pick, claiming that Krishnan, the person that was selected, wanted green cards to be easier to obtain and have more immigrants compete with Americans. Loomer would later go on to put Krishnan's information in a tweet, which was included by most news network. The conclusion here was that it was doxing, and he Elon removed Loomer's blue check mark and some of the way that she engaged. She was limited and shadow banned, it seems. It's interesting because after Loomer came out and doxed Trump's pick on X, and she's done a lot worse things on X. If you go through her profile, it is a mess. So after Elon came out and pointed out that she was doxing people and this was not allowed on X, she came back, and I'm not going to read her apology, but this is her apology right here, saying I did not know that it was doxing. I just wanted to put your private information out. Well, I thought it was publicly available, so I put it out. So I wasn't trying to dox you. Can I get my check mark back, please? Now, thank you. She has not gotten her check mark back, and so there's that. I will note that removing her check mark seems more malicious, as other people critiquing Musk and Vivek have seen that their check marks were removed. They were reporting on this again, but that's not that interesting to me until we get to the free speech part of this video. All right, let's continue. Important to note in her tweet that she does not attack Trump or in any way indicate that Trump is either fully or partially aware of the position of Krishnan. Instead, Loomer goes on to argue that Krishnan's position, which he definitely did hold prior to his nomination, was somehow a betrayal of Trump, who nominated him with prior knowledge of his position, because a Trump supporter cannot overtly disagree with Trump's pick. With all his resources, Trump could not have known this prior position of the person he chose to head a Trump could not have chosen someone else who was more in alignment with Trump's ideas if Trump didn't already believe in now supporting H-1B after he was opposed to it. And this is where all hell broke loose on X, formerly known as Twitter. Vivek would respond with a scathing read that highlight just how much of an absolute, let's just use unawareness. It would highlight his unawareness of Americana, but a read of white America that was epic and sort of ultimately detrimental to Trump's presidency. If the poorly educated understood the implication, which I'm guessing Trump supporters don't fully, I mean, they're dragging Vivek and Elon online, so they definitely understood. All right, actually, let's step back. Grab your popcorn. Let us read and discuss the scathing drag from Vivek to the Trump base, something Trump will be very okay with later. All right, y'all ready? Let's do it. Let's read this. And a one, and a two, and a skibbity-bidoo. All right, so Vivek posted on Twitter. I'm going to read it all the way through. At least the first time, because I have to. And top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit. A lazy and wrong explanation, he says. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers, and if we are really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. Whew. Get into the truth. The truth. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long. At least since the 90s, and likely longer. That doesn't start in college. It starts young. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiads champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters. I thought Steve Urkel, never mind, I'm not responding, will not produce the best engineers. Fact. I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 90s who actively limited how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promote mediocrity. And their kids want their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more books, less TV, more creating, less chilling, more extracurricular, less hangout at the mall. This is such a, sorry, I know I said I was going to just read through and not comment, but this is such a fundamental rejection and misunderstanding of Americana and American culture is what I mean again. It feels like the author Vivek finds repugnant American culture. And that is an interesting thing to be a part of the new administration to run the American government and not just saying work harder in a way that highlights sort of play also, but a rejection of American culture on such a fundamental level that he is repulsed by it. I think that's interesting. Also, it could just be a boy hurt that he was not chosen for anything in school, and therefore he's now upset with the jock and the cheerleader and the prom queen because he has it out for them. All right, sorry, let's go back to this. Most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents. I'm thinking the Tiger Mom-esque parent, he's saying that normal Americans don't like and don't engage with. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grow up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve. Now, close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 90s, or even now, who raise their kids according to one model versus the other. Be brutally honest. Normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent, and if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China. Again, sorry. This is a call to go full capitalist mode, and your every waking day as a child should be preparing you to be a capitalist cog in the dusty capitalist machine. How dare you laugh? How dare you watch TV? How dare you watch cartoon? You should be coding at 1 year. What do you mean? What do you mean you can't talk? You should be giving speeches at 1. You should be going to MIT at 5. I don't understand is what Vivek. All right, I'm being messy. This can be our Sputnik moment. We've awakened from slumber before and we can do it again. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up. A culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't just read. I know I'm supposed, but I can't just read this because wait, no one is telling me to just read. This is my video. All right. Doesn't this sound like what they say about affirmative action and DEI? I'm sorry, the irony is not lost on me that Vivek is dragging white America the way white America tried to drag black America when it comes to affirmative action. He's doing it around the H-1B visa. He's like, y'all just lazy. Yeah. Vivek said, girl, y'all lazy, and what of it? Y'all lazy, get up and work. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps and stop looking for government handout in the forms of jobs. Jobs. In the form of jobs. Hey, well, let me stop. That's the work we have cut out for us. Rather than wallowing in victimhood, just wishing or legislating alternative hiring practices into existence, I'm confident we can do this. American flag, American flag, American flag. And he then said, I said what I said. I said what I said. No, I'm sorry. I know I need to move on, but I can't just move on. We have to get into these responses because I do reject Vivek. I think that the idea that the nerd has come back and wants to drag everyone else into his mess because he didn't have a good life and now everyone should suffer the way that he did, and he thinks that's some kind of virtue, I completely, absolutely reject. So let's get into some of these responses. And while I do reject it, I agree that when we're stricter and we focus and prioritize more of one thing, we tend to get that thing that we prioritize as a household, as individuals, we tend to get that more in terms of the outcome than something we didn't plan for. I think whatever we plan for a lot of times is what we get. Now there are force majeure and society and structure and all of that to take into consideration, but I don't fundamentally disagree with the idea behind it. I disagree that you should definitely overwork and destroy yourself in the name of capitalism and making people like Vivek and Elon Musk even richer by them exploiting you more and more. But let's get to these responses. The first response, so Novak, I'm assuming, I don't know how to pronounce names, says, the Woodstock generation managed to build out aerospace. The one before went to the moon. America was doing great. Underlining your post is that we were all living in squalor until being rescued by H1Bs, not H1Bs, period. Then why did everyone want to come here? This is actually a good point. If it was so bad, why did everyone want to come? I don't know, so maybe they wanted to come and build, but I do get what he's saying, and it was a good response. Vivek said, that version of America, the one that used to embody unbridled exceptionalism, is exactly what we want to return to. That's a point about culture, not immigration policy. How do you separate culture from immigration policy? And why this man? Vivek just telling white people they dumb. Vivek is telling white people, this is Vivek's revenge for unculture dragging him. This is Vivek's revenge. ALB says, Vivek, your assertion that Native Americans are overlooked for top tech positions, let me stop. Due to cultural mediocrity is not only dismissive and oversimplified, it's an indirect acknowledgement of illegal practices under U.S. law. Period. By framing this as a cultural issue, you inadvertently admit that companies are deliberately displacing American workers, which is explicitly prohibited under the Immigration and Nationality Act. Period. You better get your legal glasses on and read. Let's address both the legality and the flaws in your argument. One, acknowledgement of, I'm not doing this, I'm not reading this. So she go on to say some things. I'm not finishing this essay. Margot says, funny, my daughter got a PhD and was prom queen. She also cheered for Baltimore Ravens while working at NASA as the world's expert on southern hemisphere of Mars, and she's white. Imagine that. Oh, white people caught on that he's dragging white culture. White people caught on that Vivek dragging white people and white culture the same way they drag black people about affirmative action. However, she's right. Again, I don't disagree necessarily about prioritizing academics over social, but if you create a bunch of people who can only engage in schoolwork in the most direct sense of like academic work, you ignore building social skills. Part of the issue with the pandemic is that people came back out into the world and didn't know how to socialize. I think a well-rounded person can do both, as this person, Margot, pointed out. Let me read one more. Texas girl says, I have to completely disagree with you. My children are Gen Z and I raise them to strive to excellence. Period. They better strive to excellence. My husband and I sacrificed to send them to private schools despite them moving a lot due to my husband's military career. My children graduated with honors. They are now married, college educated, and have homes of their own. Completely financially independent. My kids didn't go to prom because they didn't want to. You are typecasting American culture based on what you see in the movies, in my opinion. Yes, it is a fundamental it's a fundamental misunderstanding of Americana from Vivek and accepting of sort of what he went through being the nerd and rejected as what happens to people all over America. And that's not true. A lot of football players in high school didn't make it to the league and they had to focus on education and they were smart. A lot of the people who were valedictorians were really popular. Sometimes the valedictorian and the prom king or queen are the same people. Sometimes the prefect is this, well, I guess prefect doesn't count in Jamaica. All right, I'm going to take myself out of foolishness. But just know that they're not always separate. You can hang out with your friends at the mall and also do your homework at night. All right. To summarize all the responses from the MAGA crowd, they are not happy. That is a summary. They are mad. They are big mad. But Elon Musk stepped in on Twitter and, well, let's just say the tech bros and the white nationalists parts of the camp are not in alignment. Elon supports Vivek here, and Trump also supports the tech bros, which means while Trump loves the poorly educated, as he says, the tech jobs will have to go to immigrants with more education, as the poorly educated might be able to vote, but they cannot work jobs that require technical skills and, I don't know, a college education, a college degree. This is not my opinion, but rather the position of Trump and his team, his administration. This is them. That's what they're saying about their group. Let's get my views, I think, clear on Miss Americana, right? And why Vivek and the tech bros are so fundamentally flawed in their reasoning. And I call it reasoning because I do agree on some far out level about getting what you work for, but that's not true in America or anywhere in the world. But still, we would advocate for people to work for what they want, not just wanted. This is not an issue of culture, rather one of cheaper labor that is more ripe for exploitation, as explained earlier, which is my problem with the H-1B visa. So when Vivek writes that a key part of it comes down to the C word, culture, and then he goes on to tell us hard truths about America and how America venerates mediocrity over excellence, promoting the prom queen and jacks and not the valedictorian and the nerds. I think that even when he goes to the 90s sitcoms, I think he completely misunderstands the undertone and sometimes very overt decisions being made about what the stories happening on screen is telling. The 90s sitcoms were good and they were promoting the nerd, and all of the nerds, every one of the nerds, all got their clap back at everyone who treated them poorly in high school. Like, you just fundamentally misunderstand the sitcoms. But this speaks to Americana again. Save the cheerleader, save the world. LOL. The prom queen, the cheerleader, and the valedictorian, I said this earlier, can all be the same person. There seems to be a deep dislike and distrust of, quote, popular kids. I think hatred even, not just dislike or distrust. The broad indictment on American culture and the failure of America to produce better workers is deeply concerning from the administration that wants to gut the education system. Like, how are you saying we don't value education enough while they all want to gut public education? These are meaningless words, hollow and baseless. If these people wanted Americans to be more educated, they would not ban books, orchestrate an assault on, I don't know, the education system, and definitely would not make education so expensive, peddling this anti-intellectual rhetoric all through the campaign. How do you destroy the education system and then drag people for not being smart enough or educated enough? They say you have to go overseas. They have to go overseas because Americans aren't educated enough. If there is a bad culture around education, I promise you it is because the GOP has worked tirelessly to push this anti-intellectualism that exists in the GOP and MAGA in particular, telling people they don't need to go to school, they don't need to do this, they don't need to do that. Like, y'all pushed this. So let me read. Let me read further. So he goes, fact, I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 90s who actively limited how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity. And their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. By the way, this again promoting STEM. I would argue about STEM being meaningful here, but they're talking about H-1B visa. So I understand why STEM in particular would come into would come into vogue. This sounds to me like they're attempting to cultivate children who have very, very little social skills. Can we be tougher on children while also around education, while also allowing free time and them to develop into well-rounded human beings? I think we can. And I think the problem is finding the balance between sort of pushing school and education and the need for education and also developing people socially, creating friendships and bonds, and figuring out a way to both educate and have them be, I don't know, maintaining a childhood while they while they're out in they are playing. So I think wherever you come out on what is more important is ultimately a personal parenting issue. Trump's stated policy is do not help kids get a competitive advantage in the US when they are trying to, again, I will continue to say this, gut the public education. We need more money in public school, not less. Now, look, Vivek goes on to drag these parents, and I'm always here for a good drag. So he says, most normal American parents look skeptically at, quote, those kinds of parents. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grow up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve. This completely, by the way, ignores how difficult it is for parents to invest the way that they need to in their children's education with GOP policies against struggling families. Like everything that they... I needed a minute. The policies, social welfare, everything, education, healthcare, all of the policies that would create a world where Americans would have access to education and can promote it, they're being gutted by the GOP and MAGA. And then to throw it back in these people's face and say, you are just not good enough is nasty work. Like the GOP policies seem to be against struggling families. They're going to force you to have them kids. But after them kids come here, well, sucks to suck, pull yourself up by the bootstrap. Oh, well, we don't have it. I mean, ensure that at least Vivek is being consistent. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap, but it's wild to then indict. That's wild. Anyway, let's move on. Let's read another part that I wanted to talk about. He then says, now close your eyes. I'm kidding. And visualize which families you knew in the 90s and even now who raise their kids according to one model versus the other. Be brutally honest. Normalcy, in quotation, doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we'll have our aces handed to us by China. I do not understand why the pull yourself up by the bootstrap right here in Vivek's message is upsetting to the MAGA people on the right. They have long told black people just as much, yet they cry when they are told to compete. What happened to meritocracy? No. They said no handout. Work harder. The black culture is broken, they told us. That's the issue. The issue is with culture. Where did all of that go now that Vivek is telling white people that? Vivek is like, you know the thing you said to black people? Yeah, no, it applies to you too. Where did all of that go? I thought we agreed on culture being the problem on the right. I thought you just needed to work harder. Compete. Vivek then concludes with, let's stop being lazy and go succeed. He said, wait, let me, he said, this can be our Sputnik moment. We've awakened from slumber before and we can do it again, so we're sleeping. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up. A culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. That's the work we have cut out for us. Rather than wallowing in victimhood and just wishing or legislating alternative hiring practices into existence, I am confident we can do it. We can do it. He said, get you and work. It seems like nobody want to work. Vivek says, it seems like nobody want to work. In short, he was a nerd that was rejected, and now he wants to shame everyone who rejected him. Boy, tell a boy bye. Tell a boy. In short, again, I keep saying in short, capitalism reigns supreme and you just don't cut it. Stop trying and just be better, and immigrants won't take your job. This is a look, this is Vivek take. This take is not sincere and reeks of elitism. It completely ignores structural issues around education and access. It also ignores the climate that allows immigrants to be exploited and preferred in certain areas. It is wild that I'm using the affirmative action argument. Yeah. This is insanity. So I will stop. I'll stop just to stop. I'm just going to stop. However, I think that it's important to note that the pro-elitist bent here is interesting when Trump upholds Americana and claims to be for protecting the culture. To turn around and call that same culture mediocre and lazy feels like a slap in the racist face. I mean, a slap in the face of the poorly educated supporters Trump claimed to love so much. The doublespeak is only nauseating to people who believe the billionaires or elites needed to run government to help the poor and the poorly educated. Like, you're only nauseated and anxious if you're like, wait, I thought billionaires and multimillionaires, almost billionaires elites were going to help us, the poor. Trump won the non-college educated crowd in the election. He created a force for the GOP that pulls the non-college educated to them. College educated were more likely to vote Democrat, yet Trump and his team uphold the elitism of education. This is so interesting. This is interesting. The rhetorical Trump is for the everyday American without a college degree, down to the way he speaks, yet his policies now favors the educated and the elite who would just not vote for him, who didn't. Who would have thought that Trump would be upholding education in this way? I mean, I'm kidding. But those, to MAGA, but those liberal elites, am I right, guys? The fact that people voted for Trump, Trump said he loved the poorly educated, and they voted. This is wow. This is wow. Trump's cabinet said if you didn't go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Columbia, Georgetown, Emory, sucks to suck, girl. Did you get a college degree from an elite institution that says you can? No? All right, bye. And what about it? Like, I'm joking, obviously. If you don't have a college education, that's a you problem. All right. Siri, I want to ask Siri how many people have a college degree here, but I won't. The rest of y'all, just do better, be better. Welcome to capitalism. Elon put millions in Trump's campaign. This is the Elon presidency. Get in line. Like, I don't know what you thought this was. I don't understand why people are surprised Trump sided with Elon and Vivek on this. Elon Musk is debating white nationalists, and he has the following to say. He is crashing out. Like, Elon Musk is crashing out online, and I am very interested in it. And so, taking a slight detour to like Elon dragging people online, because this man, even though he said that H-1B visa are a plus, there we go, we are for, and Trump came in and backed him and Vivek on H-1B visa, thus going against everything that he talked about Trump previously about rejecting H-1B visa. Trump just backpedals, again, not important to Trump, you don't know. If you want to know what Trump will do, find what the person in the room thinks that Trump most respect, and that is the thing Trump is going to do. Or someone who has more power and more money than him. and he gonna do whatever that person is gonna do. That's how you try to figure Trump out. Anywho, Elon Musk is crashing out online. And I don't know why. Maybe there is a strategy here that I don't fully understand. But like, just because I want to, and not for any purpose other than I want to, I want us to go through some of these tweets and these back and forth. So Elon said, excellent. America should be should be a meritocracy. I actually have questions about whether or not America being a meritocracy in truth would actually be useful or good. The question of could we achieve meritocracy as a culture, as a world where people are born into different social strata and socioeconomic position, whether or not meritocracy is possible. I'm going to go ahead and say absolutely not. But even if it were, would it be ethical? Would it be good? Would it be right? Would we be happier? I don't think so. I've talked about the Sendel's book on the myth of the meritocracy. We discussed that earlier, and I think that's a good point to go back to, but I don't really care to do that now. So Elon goes, the reason I'm in America along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds other companies that made America strong is because of H1B. I don't think he came over here on H1B, but whatever. Take a big step back and F yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. Period. Brian Allen respond, I don't feel like reading his response. Elon then says, easily fixed. So someone said, America need to be a destination for the world's most elite talent, but the H1B program isn't the way to do that. I'm going to stop posting for now, but let me know if there are any other visualizations that would be helpful. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. I didn't read the first part of, I don't care. So Elon responded and said, easily fixed by raising the minimum salary significantly and adding a yearly cost for maintaining the H-1B, making it materially more expensive to hire from overseas than domestically. I've been very clear that the program is broken and needs major reform. This, by the way, is a direct U-turn from how he was defending, but I included it because I just wanted to show that they're softening out a little bit because of the drag. There were some responses on Trump when he said that he's pro H-1B and he sides very directly with Vivek and and Elon Musk. It was pointed out to him when he said that his Mar-a-Lago team operates because of H-1B visa employees, and people were pointing out that that's highly unlikely. But I don't think Trump knows or care about an H-1B visa at Mar-a-Lago. I don't think he cares, really. I think he is not an ideologue, and that he's different from Elon in the way that he's not ideologically bound, and that can be very dangerous or it can be meaningful. There is this whole thing with Elon changing his name on Twitter and using his burner account to argue on behalf of himself and defend himself, which I find deeply problematic and troubling. I just don't know that. And he's been going into Twitter space talking and just defending himself and dragging people and removing people's checkmark and all of that. I won't put all of this up because I realize the video is way longer than it needs to be, and as I was going to go through some more of my, I don't know if you can see this, some more of my Elon Musk tweets. I'll just conclude by saying Elon is crashing out. And I'm deeply concerned about what this means when he is officially part of the Trump administration come inauguration day, if this kind of behavior is going to continue. Let's just go to a conclusion quickly. Let's just go to my conclusion, period. I think the Ouroboros nature of MAGA with the introduction of sort of technocrats is interesting. Does Trump go with his base? Does he double down on the rhetoric that won him the presidency, appealing to a pseudo-populist stance, or does he betray his base and rhetoric to be in concert with the tech globalist elites? I wonder what a billionaire fake populists will do. And I'm not just talking about the H-1B visa issue. We already have an answer for that. He sides with the billionaires. Will he serve the good of the base, or will he forsake his base for billionaire friends? Again, on the H-1B visa argument, we started to see how MAGA's ethos is not real for the people at the top, for the tech sector, right? Can you imagine if Harris said we needed immigrants because Americans and American culture promotes laziness? Can you imagine how she would be eaten up by the media? We know there is a double standard. Now, not just Kamala, but anyone on her team, because Kamala could never say storm the capitals were patriots and float the idea of pardoning them. So, like, we know there's going to be a double standard. We know it exists. While Elon is not the president, I also think it is important to take his policy position seriously, because the richest man owning one of the main means of public discourse, i.e., X, formerly Twitter, and the person having given millions to make sure Trump became president, I have a hunch, I think, we can confidently say that Musk's opinion is the one we need to worry about in the coming years. And those opinions will matter a lot and probably shape public policy more than any other person in the US, barring Trump. Maybe not even barring Trump, who, again, Trump is not an ideologue. Like, we don't know what underpins Trump's decision making ideologically. I've considered reviewing Musk's take on freedom of speech. I decided against it previously, not sure exactly why I did that then. So let me do it here in part. This is the conclusion, so I get to do whatever I want. That's what I believe a conclusion. I'm joking. A little segment on Musk's hypocrisy, particularly around freedom of speech. There is this TV show that I don't need to get into and I don't need at all, but I'm just going to bring it up because I want to talk about it and I want to tell you to watch it. It's called The 100s. It's a series. Essentially, it is a post-apocalyptic young adult sci-fi series. The Earth is destroyed due to nuclear explosions. Some people went to space on a bunch of spaceship, and now they are attempting to come back down, but they need to know if the Earth is habitable. Jumping over the plot mostly to the important part for this section, because you don't need all of it for me to explain what I'm going to explain, a principle. So skipping all the plot to the most important part. So 100 delinquent kids who were locked up in prison on the Ark were sent to Earth to test the Earth habitability, right? Is it habitable? For the others to follow on the Ark, because the Ark was running out of oxygen. They all had these bracelets on, and the bracelets would monitor their vitals from the Ark. So people in the Ark could tell how they were, if they were alive, based on their bracelet. There is one guy, Bellarmine, on the ship who shot the Chancellor to get help to be placed on the ship. There's an assassination attempt at the Chancellor. He became part of it in exchange for his passage on the ship because he wanted to be there to protect his sister, who was a delinquent because she was born in the ship, and in truth, they didn't have enough oxygen, so you shouldn't be having children. So she was a delinquent. She becomes my favorite character, spoiler alert. But anyway, Bellarmine is the strongest. He is the baddest. He was trained as a guard and quickly became the leader of the group on Earth. The delinquents who came to Earth had a leader in Bellarmine who had a motto. We can do whatever the hell we want. Do whatever the hell we want. Whatever we want was the motto of the girls and boys on Earth, with Bellarmine at the head, who didn't really care about group leadership. The group quickly devolved into chaos without any structure or limits to behavior. Bellarmine had his sister, thus he did not care much for what was happening around him. People could do what they want until he learned what the bracelets did and that the people on the Ark would follow them down. Immediately, he started requesting that people needed to remove their bracelet in order to eat. Now, I think it's important to know that he rationalizes this and he is now making rules because he doesn't want to be punished for shooting the Chancellor, right? Slowly, Bellarmine realized he could lead for real, and the people around him would follow his rule. Sure, he was doing it selfishly to not be punished by the adults on the Ark for shooting the Chancellor when they came down, but he also realized if they were going to survive as kids down there on the Earth, if they were going to survive, if they were going to live on Earth, they needed rules and limits to what they could do to survive and build a society. Freedom in absolute terms was absolutely impossible in a world where people You and I had to interact with other people. Much the same way, free speech absolutists are either ignorant of what speech is or dishonest about their goals. You cannot always say whatever the hell you want. There is a time and a place and a manner limitation on your speech, on my speech, on everyone's speech. We are not ever fully able to ever say how we want, how we feel in the way we want to and the way we feel it. We are now fully aware that Musk adhere to speech restriction beyond the law, as multiple of the people who pushed back against his H-1B visa stance were shadow banned and had their check marks removed, allegedly. He is not the man who truly believes in free speech completely and allowing everyone to have a voice and all of those voices to have a platform in the marketplace of ideas. You can't. No one can. Doing whatever the hell you want in the 100s was not plausible. It was not useful. It was not good to structure a society. In the same way, free speech, saying whatever the hell you want, does not work at all, ever, anywhere in the public space. When Trump got banned on Twitter and Musk bought Twitter for free speech purposes, it was obvious to anyone with a brain that this was about promoting his own ideas. In the same way in the 100, when Bellamy wanted his ideas to be pushed forward, when his policies needed to be implemented, then he had to restrict ideas about movement and what could and could not be said. For capitalism, the people who get to set the limits on speech are the owners of platforms for said speech. The rich gets the megaphone. After all, corporate spending in election cannot be limited because this is speech. Money is speech. While we the people vote, your voice is chilled when faced with the cold, hard cash that comes from millionaires, billionaires, and corporations. Because again, the Supreme Court decided that corporate spending is corporate speech and the government should not be limiting speech, and because spending money is speech, well, you can't limit it. The video is not necessarily about free speech. In truth, you can say whatever you want without any restriction alone in your room. Okay, I'm purposely being annoying. This video was about highlighting the GOP problem and putting it on all our radar to watch. Their H-1B visa issue is a microcosm of a much deeper ideological divide in the GOP now. Who does the party serve? What will the policies be? With the limited number of H-1B visa allowed each year, this cannot be the primary debate and should be treated as a starting point for what I call, I'm gonna leave that alone, a starting point for further discussion about the party currently, and who has power, why, and how it's being used. Who will the policies help and how will they work? I look forward to covering the next 4 years of. I will not say I look forward to covering the next 4 years of Trump's presidency, because as soon as I was about to say that something flew in my eye, I take your word, God, I will not lie on here. When the cracks deepen, who will be left standing, Musk or Trump? Can they make it through this presidency with their public friendship intact? Will Trump or Musk throw the other under the bus due to public pressure and policy differences? What will America be in the next 4 years? This is true. I look forward to going back to these questions with you all and sort of remembering what we thought now and what we will be thinking throughout all of this. So I look forward to it. And this is, I think, is a good place to end and also start for the coming administration. So I will see you guys later. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I am writing an open letter to Trump, not sure where it will be and when it will be completed, but I will read it on here as a standalone video. I cannot say I want Trump to fail or succeed at this point because I'm not sure if Trump's success will be at the cost of America. What I can say is that I do hope 4 years from now, after he's done, this becomes a better America than the one he inherited, or at least stay the same. There's no part of me, I don't think, there's no part of me that wants him to make it worse. I don't need to say I told you so. I want to be wrong. Anyways, I go live at 6 p.m. Fridays, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to join me to discuss politics and culture, through what I hope is an analytical lens. Anyway, now I'm gone. Bye. Hey guys, I'm not actually gone. I'm gone. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, but I'm not gone. I'm going to start posting in February, maybe March, because I will be moving in February, but in March, I will start posting on my debunking excellence video. I think I have things to say. After watching the meltdown online with Vivek, Musk, and Trump against the Trump base, I think there's things that I need to talk about that is not deeply political or cultural, but it goes in line with the idea of excellence and sort of demystifying a lot of it. I've always been sort of afraid of giving advice, particularly around success, because it feels like I have to become an authority on these ideas. But I've been inspired. I've been writing a book separate from the books, the fictions that I've been writing. I've been writing a book about sort of dealing with stress and life and type A and perfectionism. But my book leans very heavily into these things and don't treat them as negative. So I think I'm going to engage with it while figuring out ways to make sure that I am being mindful of mental health and rest and care and how I use those when I can, because I don't generally. Resting is not a thing that I think about. Sleeping is not a thing that I think about. And so when I was on the debunking excellence sort of arc, I realized very quickly, and why I stopped, was that my way is dig your heels in and get it done. Figure out who you are, what you want, and how to make who you are the person who gets what they want, and do it. And that sort of bombastic side eye, that sort of bravado, I believe, is required, and it's my way. And I don't think anyone has to agree with it. So I can put it out. It might help one or two people. I don't foresee it helping a lot of people, but I do think it might help. It might even help me. It might be cathartic for me. And I can look and see where I went wrong in not taking time for myself. So that's what's going to be happening on Debunking Excellence come March. Yeah, so I just wanted to give you all a heads up that I'll be doing it. And I'll try to make it more casual, but it is what it is. All right, now I'm going for true. For true. For real. Bye.